Early in life, you decided you wanted to become a sorcerer. Could you explain a little bit more about that?
Well, that's the time I was 15, and that's the time where in Holland you have to choose more or less the direction you're going to develop yourself. So you have to take away certain subjects in your education and make others more important. So the question is very evident: what do you want to become? And from inside, the answer was, I want to become a sorcerer, a wizard. I didn't tell my parents, I didn't tell at school, so because then you get medication or all kinds of problems. So I just kept my mouth shut, and I told my parents in the school, pilot, I want to become a pilot. So my parents, oh, thumbs up, and everybody happy. But inside, it was clear for me, I want to become a sorcerer. I didn't really have a real idea about it, more romantic, like Merlin or Gandalf, or maybe for more younger people, like the story of Harry Potter, something like this. But I kept looking for it, and slowly I started realizing I was meaning something like becoming a medicine man, or a shaman, or some kind of special kind of warrior, or there's all kinds of people in all kinds of cultures that do fantastic, wondrous things. And what I was meaning, I want to become part of that world. There is a certain magic in the world, and not in our culture. In our culture, it's more or less disappeared, or is disqualified. It's not serious. Yeah? But in a lot of other cultures, that's something that really exists, and I wanted to become a part of that world. So that's how it started.
So then the journey started. Where did you begin?
I started with a shamanistic training. There was a Hungarian man who came to Amsterdam. Amsterdam was at that time the post-hippie time, and a lot of strange people walked into the town, and one of them was a shaman from Hungary. Started doing some trainings with him, and then I started to work for a travel company. I was able to do a lot of traveling around the planet, and everywhere I could, I went to medicine women and special clairvoyant people, or people having hands that could do things, healing, and started to look for interesting martial art people. So, but it started with a small, basic shamanistic training.
Now people see you as a Daoist teacher. When did you first came in contact with the Daoist tradition?
Well, originally, the first real contact was the book The I Ching, that was popular in the 70s, and I liked reading it, but I couldn't figure it really out, so that slipped away in all the other books I was reading. Later I found out that with all those special men and women, doesn't matter where in the world, they were all talking about that you need a lot of energy to become a wizard. You need energy. It's an energy thing to become a sorcerer. And slowly I also discovered that to get that tremendous amount of energy, you needed to train your sexual energy. So there was some sexual component necessary to become a sorcerer. And I couldn't figure it out. So, and only I think when I was about 30, then I stumbled onto the work of Mantak Chia. He was a Thai Daoist teacher who was formerly Chinese. He was from Chinese origin, but he was living and working in Thailand and upstate New York, and later back to Thailand. And he was teaching transformational sexual techniques for both men and women. And that triggered me, so I started doing those things out of a book. I blew it, I made mistakes, I was not reading the book properly, I was just experimenting, and anyway, I damaged myself, and that set me really on the course to, I anyway want to learn it, but I started wrong, so I took the decision, okay, if I want to really learn these things, I need real training. I went to Thailand, I went to Mantak, and I lived altogether maybe 1.5 years with him on the compound, and also in Holland we had one of his senior teachers, Annette Derksen was her name, and I was studying 8 years with her, and step by step I started to to learn the secrets of the sexual kung fu or the transformational sexuality. And later on I also went to China and started learning directly from other people. And I also started to read books in another way. And at a certain moment, I started fully to understand it. And then started teaching it. Now I'm teaching those things already since the year 2000. And now it's part of my whole training and what I transmit and what I train myself.
You mentioned your training. Is what you're training what is called inner alchemy?
Yeah, Neidangung, that's the Chinese term. Internal alchemist training, that's in reality, when I contacted Daoists, you could say I came home. So my original idea of I want to become a wizard, a sorcerer, I want to belong to those magical people. And I found a lot of those people all around the planet, also in Holland, but also in other countries. But when I came in the internal alchemy training, when I met the men and women who were doing that, I felt, this is what I meant. Now I become part of a tradition where there is really a step-by-step program to become the sorcerer. It's not only about the sexuality. First, I became interested in Taoism because of the sexual knowledge. But soon after that, I discovered, because I already did so much work in other systems and other mystic schools, this is not only about sexuality, this is really the whole thing. So the 7 formulas of the Neidangung, the 7 formulas of the internal alchemy, that's what I meant. That's what I meant when I was 15. That's what I wanted to learn. And so I started to learn beyond the sexual techniques. I also started to learn all kind of other techniques, and it became my life. Now I'm really part of that tradition now.
Can you explain a little further about what exactly do you train? You have all these techniques and you practice inner alchemy, but what does it mean?
Well, the Daoist, or the people who are, let's say, have some kind of magical touch with the world, they believe that there are 2 worlds. It's the manifested world, they call the outer landscape. So that's really what we all know, and also in the West trust that it's there. So just the manifested world. But behind that, or through that, or under that, somehow is another world. And the Daoists call this the inner landscape. And they say those 2 worlds, the manifested world and the internal world that's breathing under and through it, also the world where all creation comes out, they study the interaction between those 2 worlds. That's what a sorcerer in reality is doing. So he's able to go into the inner landscape, influence certain things there, and that will change the outcome and the manifestation in the outer world. So that's the real thing of magic. You have to somehow go into the world before it's manifested. So you have to go into the inner landscape. There you become knowledgeable and adequate and functional. You can really touch and make things there, and then it will change manifestation and it will change the course of history. So that process is in reality what all the magical women and men in the world are somehow doing. And the Daoists, they're already transmitting this knowledge for thousands of years. We really talk about 6,000 years of written down heritage. They somehow preserved this knowledge, and where in the Western culture it's more or less disappeared and became vague, or people don't trust it anymore in certain corners of the world. In the mountains, the high mountains of the Chinese Daoist, it's still there. And so what you actually do, you're training yourself to go into the inner landscape step by step. It's really about very safe. It's not a reckless thing. It's very methodic. It's very step by step, and then slowly you learn how to behave yourself. And at a certain moment, you can start making things, creating things in the creational force itself, and then it starts changing reality. And that's actually the path of an internal alchemist.
You mentioned earlier 7 formulas or steps, maybe.
Yeah.
Could you tell us a little bit more about those?
I'm afraid that there's the danger, that question of making a very long story. But Basically, the Taoists make a difference in all kinds of consciousness. You have psychotic forms of consciousness, you have confused forms of consciousness, you have specialized forms of consciousness, you have realized phases of consciousness, but there is one between specialism and realism, and that's wisdom. The wisdom or initiated forms of consciousness. And it's about that form of consciousness that's the training. So they acknowledge all 5 different forms of consciousness, but they focus on this form. How to create wisdom, or how to initiate yourself into that inner world. And they constructed it, or it's maybe not even the good word, it's built out of 7 different spheres, 7 different steps of greater, deeper, wider, more mysterious, stronger. And you have to go step by step. First, the first step of the wisdom training, then the second, then the third, then the fourth. And anyway, I trained 24 years to get the first step done. So the first initiational step of the Neidangung I mastered. So it took me 24 years. It seems long, but it doesn't matter. It was a fantastic period, and it was also difficult to understand sometimes, because the Western perception of things and the Taoist perception of things was so different that it took me a while to figure it out. It's not really necessary to take 24 years. Maybe I was a slow learner, I'm not sure, but anyway, I enjoyed it very much, and it brought me a massive understanding of that first step. And at the present moment, I'm training the second step myself, but part of training the second step is transmitting the first step to other people. So passing it on to the next generation, anybody who wants to learn those things.
What can you tell us about the first step? What kind of benefits can we expect?
Okay, the first step itself is acknowledgement that there's 2 worlds, and you somehow need a key, or you need a door between those 2 worlds. So how do you enter from the manifested world into the potential world, the inner landscape? How do you go from the outer to the inner, and how do you go from inner back to outer? And you need a key, or you need a door, and the Taoists call this step the training of the Yi, or the E-power. This is a certain state of mind. You bring yourself in, and then suddenly you start feeling, okay, here is my manifested body, and here is the manifested world, but suddenly you realize, there is the other side as well. And then you slip in. And slipping in, you use a technique that's called the inner smile. So first you bring yourself in this Yi state of being, and then you open the door and you step in. And in the beginning you make very small steps. So you stay very close to the body. You stay very close to the inner landscape of your lungs and to your heart and liver. So you don't go far. It's not like, okay, I take a baby and I say, okay baby, why don't you play outside, and drop the baby in the middle of a jungle. No, if you take a baby out of the basket, and then you put it in a small confined space to play with a ball or some puppet. So, and then when it's going well, you can go to a bigger room, and then you go to the play garden of the kindergarten, and so slowly you develop yourself into a bigger area of movement. And it's the same in the landscape. So you start with small steps. First, you bring yourself on the border of 2 worlds, and then you make a small step in, and then you make a small step back. And you make another step and another step and a step back. And so you have to be able to go into it, and you have to be able to come back. And the more you train that, very small steps, very easy, very simple, anybody can do it. And then slowly, I start to understand the idea. Then you make a few more steps, and then you come back. And you could say that the training is this 1, 2, 3 steps and back, 1, 2, 3, 4 steps and back, 5 steps and back. So you don't go wandering in and you never come back. Could even be dangerous, because the inner landscape is vast. It's incredible big. It's very adventurous. It's like the outer world. It's very big, but you have to know how to behave. You don't cross highways without looking left and right. You also don't go in the inner landscape and just do things without knowing what you're doing. No, you have to be knowledgeable, careful, responsible for your actions there, and stay, and always are able to come back in a sound and healthy way. So that's the beginning. That's the beginning. And but there is no real end to it. It's very big. So the first step is how you enter in a safe way, how you come back in a safe way, become knowledgeable, movable in a responsible way, and then slowly, slowly you start going to the first initiation. So then you start slowly, okay, now I'm ready. Now let's make the first initiational step. Yeah. So, and that's Pearl consciousness. So the first real step of the wisdom training is called Pearl consciousness. Yeah.
This Pearl consciousness sounds really interesting. What exactly is it?
Well, the Daoist sometimes is looked upon or mentioned as a philosophical system or as a religional system based on nature. And it's a little bit true. The Daoists are very aware of the nature around them, and they see the nature growing and moving in cycles. They see spring and summer and Indian summer and fall and winter. And they see the trees following that cycle and growing bigger and stronger and impressive. So Daoists are very interested to say, if nature is doing that, and I might be a creature of nature, why don't I do that? So Daoism is sometimes meant as aligning yourself to the cycles of nature. Many cycles, huh? Morning, midday, afternoon, evening, night, young, adolescents, grown up, getting older and very old and disappearing. It's all cycle. And okay, so first the Daoists align themselves to this natural rhythm of cycles. That's why it's sometimes called a nature religion or a nature philosophical system. But Pearl consciousness goes beyond that, because nature is not only sweet and creative, but you also have earthquakes, or you have tsunamis, or you have huge storms destroying everything around you, and that is also nature. And the Daoists started to sincerely study these destructive forces of nature. They say, okay, we have all this creative force, but we have also these destructive forces around us. How do we deal with that? It's nice to align yourself with nature, but what does it mean if you align yourself with destructive forces? And that's exactly what we do. We humans have a wish to be creative. We are creative on our job, or we create children, or we create houses, and we like creation. If it's broken down, a house, oh, we lost our house. But we also destroy things ourselves. We're smoking, we are having all kind of compulsive behavior that is not really healthy, and we're struggling with, I am overweight, I need to lose weight, but I eat too much. And so you all the time see this creative and counter-creative or destructive movements. And the Daoists finally understood, okay, we have to find an answer to the destructive forces, the storm around us. And so they started to study the storm. And what they found after a certain moment, that in the storm there is an eye of calmness. Then you have this hurricane, but in the middle of the hurricane is an eye. And everything is actually relatively quiet and safe. And they became very interested in that eye of the storm. So at a certain moment they developed internal techniques with this e-power and in a landscape, and they went in and they built at a certain moment a kind of anchor, a kind of stable connection with the eye of the storm. So they found the eye of the storm, and they create something that they put in the middle of the storm. This they call a pearl, and then they connect their own consciousness to that pearl. They anchor themselves in the eye of the storm. And this is where wisdom starts. So if you're able to do that, if you're able to find a point of calmness in all creative and destructive forces that becomes non-polar, that is just boom, something in me has found the eye of the storm. And my consciousness in reality constant talking to that, and it's talking back. Here is the eye of the storm. Here is the eye of the storm. Here is the eye of the storm. And slowly you start to disconnect a little bit from all this madness, and you start to see a way to handle all these incredible forces. And that's the first step of wisdom. And you get an enormous effect on other people as well. Everybody is crazy. Everybody's, oh, what's going on? What do I have to do with life, with sex, with the relations, with jobs, with money, not enough money? It's crazy. Boom. And suddenly there is a calmness there. And this point of calmness, that has a slowly spreading effect through yourself. You become a very nice, very calm, very able person who is capable to behave himself in very difficult circumstances with a very neutral way of handling himself and the situation. And for other people it becomes also calming. And then you give these people the transmission as well, and they become calm and more natural. And so slowly. And I think actually that's what the world at the moment really, really needs. I think we don't need a few magical persons. We don't need a few wizards and sorcerers or some very special gifted women and men. No, we need millions of people training the wisdom. So I think we have 7 billion people now. I think we need to teach all our children how to become not only knowledgeable people, but initiated in wisdom, and how to find the eye of the storm. And then all together we get a chance to move the planet in a more wiser direction, so that not only our children's children, but also their children's children have a chance to live on this fabulous planet in a nice way, in a safe way.
Well, that bigger picture sounds great, of course, but walking that path towards it, what kind of things can we expect? The Daoist teachings are also healing teachings. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, it's a whole variety of techniques. First you learn how to balance yourself and get a better connection with the body. How to find this inner state of being that they call the Yi. And then they are going to slowly mix it with all kind of things. You start raising levels of consciousness, you start training your martial art, but you don't become a martial artist, but martial art becomes a part of your training. And you start training the art of healing, self-healing or healing of others, but you don't become really a healer, but you also walk the path of healing. And by activating both paths, the path of the warrior and the path of the shaman, you become a shaman warrior. And what happens when you train both sides, path of the warrior and path of the shaman, slowly they start to interlock. And the moment they interlock, you become a sorcerer. So I know there are a lot of people who like martial art and they become specialists in the martial art. And so a lot of people interested in healing, all kinds of healing, doesn't matter what kind of healing, and they become specialists in healing. But doing this, you don't find that path of wisdom. It's going from healing to martial art, from martial art to healing. So up and down and up and down and up. And this is the way of the internal alchemy. And then slowly it becomes one thing and you become a shaman warrior, or what they call a sorcerer, or a true being is also a name they use in Taoism. The wandering Daoists who are fabulous in the martial art, and they're also very good in the healing, but that's not the issue. What they want to be is these true beings that have their core connected with the eye of the storm, are you could say, walking pieces of not doing. Very inspirational people, men and women, that are very inspirational to meet or to have as teacher or as transmitting you the knowledge and becoming one yourself.
What are some characteristics of your own style of teaching? What kind of teacher are you?
I'm a little bit a fire teacher, so I'm a little bit impatient. A lot of fire. I'm very much down to earth. I like to connect the training to sport, to the body. I hate all these enlightenment things, so I dislike going, we all want to become enlightened. We don't need enlightened people, we need true beings. We need sorcerers and wizards that have a firm connection with Mother Earth, who are caring about the planet and the nurturing power of planet Earth. It's the goddess, you could say. It's a dark, clean, nurturing energy you need. And at the same time, yes, I am interested in light and in the inspirational and awakening force of light. But the Daoists, they really believe in the mix of those two. So nurturing power and enlightening energy. and then you mix it, and that's the famous Tai Chi symbol, where not only enlightenment plays a role, but also the nurturing force of Mother Earth. Together, they make the life force. So I'm really following that path. I'm very interested in a healthy body and in a respectful way to treat the earth, and don't overestimate or don't go too much in enlightenment ways, but much more be a good person. So you don't have to be enlightened, just be yourself. It's very much becoming an authentic person, and very down to earth. Like I said, you must be able to manage your life in the outer landscape just as well as your life in the inner landscape. So you go in and out, and in both worlds you are trained and well behaved and inspiring for other people.
You also had training with the Toltecs in Central America. What can you tell us about that?
Well, I had to be more specific. I became very interested in the books of Castaneda. He was writing about two wizards, two sorcerers, Don Juan and Don Gennaro, Mexican Toltec. Toltec is a man or a woman who knows. So they also knew about this inner landscape, and they were very knowledgeable and very able to do fantastic things there. And Castaneda wrote a little bit frustrated books about those two men and another group of sorcerers behind it, because Castaneda was not, he wanted to understand it and connect with it, but he was not able. And but I learned a lot from those books. They were very inspirational, and later on I understood there were more Toltec teaching. I also went to Mexico to find all kinds of power places. Also found a woman who was doing Toltec knowledge. She died, but I had some connections with her. And so in the beginning of my training, the step from shamanism to Toltec was mainly that. I was very inspired by the Toltec. But I became a little bit more careful with the Toltec knowledge and path when I understood how much substances they use. They use a lot of let's say drugs to make higher forms of consciousness. And I also became, let's say, I started to become curious about Taoism because the Toltec didn't know very much about the sexual training. They have some sexual training, but when I figured out how the Toltec got that sexual training, it turned out to be a Chinese man in around 1850 who came to America to work on the railroads in America. And after he understood it was slavery, he ran away and he went to Mexico. And then he started teaching sexual kung fu from ancient China to the Toltec in that area. And so Chinese sexual techniques came into the Toltec system as well. But so I decided to go to the source and make the step from Mexico to China, and started to learn, to teach, to understand the sexual practice directly from the Daoists themselves.
And now you are a specialist in Daoist sexual practices. What does characterize your interpretation of this knowledge?
Well, if you are interested in the sexual knowledge and the sexual techniques of the Daoists, you have to understand that they see creation, all of creation, as a result of sex. So let's say sex, the sun having sex with earth, animals having sex with other animals. There is incredible amount of abundance in the universe, and it's all the result of sex. It's forces, counter forces that spiral into each other and create new things. Everything in the universe is spiraling and creating new bursts of energy and creation. And so the Taoists, if they talk about sex, they don't talk about rubbing yourself against somebody else. They talk about that sex is the secret of all creational forces in the universe. So that's why they're interested in sex. And then they look again upon themselves and they see the ovary and they see the testicle and they think, okay, somehow that's the plug into that secret. And they see, with my ovary, as you're a woman, or my testicles, I have a connection to that incredible force. And so that's why they started to investigate it. Okay, what does it mean? What does it mean my testicles, I'm a man, have connection with that force? And now, how can you get it out? And how can you clean it? And how can you prepare it in a certain way that instead of losing it or spending it like in our culture, we're spending sexual energy for babies or for fun. But there's a third way, the Daoist way, or the transformational sexuality, that you not only make healthy babies, and you not only are a good lover, but you also know how to use and preserve that energy for abundancy. Abundancy means you have enough. You have enough energy to be intense, to be healthy, to achieve your goals, to walk your path. For a Daoist, there's never a shortage of energy. In our culture, you see a lot of people struggling with, I have no energy, I'm exhausted, I'm burned out, I can't do anymore, it's crazy. And how do I get energy? And they also go chocolate and alcohol, cocaine, whatever, energy. But for Taoist, it's crazy. I mean, look around yourself, it's exploding of energy, and it's all sexual. And we have a constant connection with it, with the ovary and the testicles. The only thing you have to do, learn the techniques. Train yourself into be able to get the connection with this abundancy. You never again shortage of energy. There's always energy. There's even more than you can use in daily life. So the more energy you don't use for daily life, you start to transform in higher forms of consciousness. So you make your life even more interesting and intense. And if you're like me, you want to become a magical person, you can use that abundance of energy to transform into magical abilities.
To whom would you recommend to start this training of all this internal alchemy?
Well, first to all young men and young women who have the feeling there must be something more than this. There must be some magic behind all this, and they're really ready to start training immediately. Yeah? But you can also zoom out. To be honest, I would say everybody could be interested in this. If you are having problems with your health, train the healing techniques and start rebalancing yourself and start healing yourself. And if you're interested in martial art, if you want to become a good martial artist, and train the techniques to become a very good martial artist. And later, if you're a really good martial artist, you also have to start to be interested in healing. You can hit your fist on the liver and destroy the liver, but it's another thing to heal the liver when it is injured. And if you are able to destroy a liver and you're able to heal a liver, then you become a shaman warrior and you become one of those intense magical persons. So, to my opinion, everybody should learn this. But I know for a lot of people, this is completely crazy, this guy, but it's not. So, if you're interested in magic, if you're interested in is there anything more beyond all of this? And are you curious about intensity and how to get lots of energy until your last breath on this planet? Then I would highly recommend start training.